Without is what I say. Hey, welcome back. Sometimes I like to break that fourth wall. Well, we're breaking it all the time, honestly. So I don't know.
Down.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about. But anyway, we're back with Jordan Flatt, and Doc is with us via Skype from an undisclosed location over in Great Britain. Now, Doc, are you actually in England proper, or are you someplace else?
No, I'm actually at Rugby HQ at the Twickenham Marriott. I'm excited to be here. This is the rugby world capital, and I love coming here every time there's a rugby game. If you don't know a lot about rugby, go check it out. Southeast Polk has the best rugby program in the state. And I think one of the kids that graduated a couple years ago is playing internationally now. So, we do in Iowa, we have a really good rugby program. So I'm just here sitting in my motel room. There's not much exciting. I try to make it as exciting as possible, but I had a choice between doing it from the bathroom or doing it from my
Fair enough.
bed.
Well, no, you don't need to elaborate. You don't need to elaborate on any of the rest of that stuff. I remember, now, Jordy, you and I are both University of Iowa alums.
Correct.
We're both ecstatic at our undefeated Hawkeyes.
Cannot believe it.
You and I were both saying, we talked about this last year at the end of the season, how terrible this year was going to be, how we were done. Do you remember? I remember that conversation.
I remember that conversation.
We were done. We were over it, and boy, we were really wrong. I was wrong.
The coaching philosophy completely changed at the University of Iowa overnight. It's like they brought in a new staff.
I can't believe it.
Way of doing things.
It's putting the offense not solely in the control of a quarterback that doesn't get to call his own plays, but at least giving him a little bit of freedom to improvise is just. I don't know who this head coach is anymore. But anyway, but I don't want to get derailed on Hawk Talk. That's another show. Well, the Blake Lubina's Hawkeye podcast, we'll be launching that here in at the end of the season. But no, so we were talking at the end of the last segment a little bit about some of the folks who are organized in Iowa on the Republican side, and I want to kind of segue that into some talk about Paul Ryan now. One of Doc and I's favorite things to talk about for the last 3 years. We talk about, honestly, if you go back and poll YouTube, I got to say, Doc, that the thing we talk most about is the schism in the Republican Party. We use that word specifically because it's fun to say, and it also is very evocative of how just messed up the Republican Party has been for the last several years at this point. The different factions and stuff. It's kind of like the Democrats in the 70s and 80s. They just can't seem to get behind anybody for any length of time. That's demonstrated by the ousting of Boehner. That's been demonstrated by how many candidates there are running for president. And it's demonstrated by this inability, it seems, to pick a Speaker of the House. Now, Paul Ryan recently came out and said, hey, I'm going to do this. I'll do this, but I have some conditions. I don't want to be fired. I don't want to have to raise a lot of money for candidates, and I don't want to give up family time. Plus, you all have to give your unanimous consent. Now, before we talk about the conditions, Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House, Jordy, what do you think about that?
Really, my only experience in watching Paul Ryan was when he was Romney's vice presidential candidate. He seems like a nice, affable fellow. Everyone in Congress seems to think he's a good numbers guy, that he is a kind of a policy wonk or a number cruncher, that he is more than sufficient at that. I haven't met a lot of affable number crunchers who are great leaders in my time. I'm not a fan of the Paul Ryan being the Speaker of the House. He has some weaknesses when it comes to the Republican caucus, the Liberty caucus. He seemed to set a lot of conditions that are unreasonable. Wasn't one of those conditions also that it took more than one person to call for a new Speaker of the House? I'm not familiar with the House rules.
It's the motion to vacate the chair. He kind of wanted to do away with that entire process.
That's kind of dictatorial, and with the recent track record of Republicans in leadership positions,
not been good.
Probably they're just not winning much lately.
Doc, what do you think about Paul Ryan? Because I have some. I want to bring this back around.
Well, I will tell you, I wrote an article when he came up with his Medicare plan for his health care reform and a couple other things. And honest to goodness, it was just a bunch of liberal pablum. And as I remember reading this, going, a Democrat would have had to work hard to come up with ideas this dumb. And since that time, I've not been a big fan of Paul Ryan. Don't get me wrong. I think he did an okay job against Joe Biden in a debate. Okay,
I don't know,
but he left a lot of opportunities on the ground. And so I'm not a big fan of Paul Ryan. I think he's much more moderate than people think he is. And I don't think the conservative coalition is going to coalesce behind him like he wants. That's why he sent out the rules. He doesn't want to have to take all the crap and get all the bad stuff and then have to deal with these guys backstabbing him all the time.
Well,
I see how he would do it, but the bottom line is if you have a reluctant speaker, all this does is weaken the Republican Party even further.
Well, and it's interesting to hear you say that you don't think he's as conservative, and that seems to me to be what I've heard a lot, and I'm shocked by that because the Medicaid or the Medicare reform plan was about as conservative of a document as you can think. His budgets have been uniformly scored as conservative as any conservative policy wonk has been over the last 25 years. And what I would also say is that his performance in the as a vice presidential candidate, he's an incredibly conservative person. From my perspective, what I find interesting about it is that he's been willing, in a sort of technocratic sense, to work across the aisle to find some common ground. He reached out on his budget proposals, I believe, with that's not Patty Murray, is it? I can't. That name sounds maybe, and she might even be an Iowa politician. I can't remember, but there was another representative and then a Democratic senator that he was trying to work with to get some budget deals done. And what I think, especially the Freedom Caucus, I think it's called, especially with the Freedom Caucus, who, if you talk about unreasonable, in terms of their governing philosophy or lack thereof, the way that things are set up, and especially the way that things are set up now structurally for the next several years, there's got to be some kind of compromise. And frankly, and we can talk about equivalencies on the left and the right, but frankly, the folks that are driving the non-compromise train are the folks in the Freedom Caucus, and I think that's making it hard for the Republicans to do anything, especially in the House. So if, in that sense, I would agree that Paul Ryan maybe isn't the best choice, but that's kind of because he doesn't have a lot to work with, and he doesn't have people wearing the red ties that are willing to work with him. Quick thoughts, quick response to that, and then we got to take another break.
Well, I guess my thought to that is first, I can't name any great moderates in history. Can you?
Great moderates?
Moderate, great leaders in history, in American history.
Great moderate leaders in American history. I don't know. Would you call JFK a moderate?
He would be about the closest one.
Would you call Nixon was pretty moderate?
Nixon, I would not call him a great leader. I'd call him he was kind of a precursor to the Hillary Clinton paranoid, controlling leadership here.
Ronald Reagan raised taxes. He kind of got
Ronald
things done.
Reagan did raise taxes, but
call him a great
he
leader?
lowered them significantly before he raised them. So
because he found out that it'd blow a hole in the budget, but whatever.
Or as Tip O'Neill went out and pushed spending bill after spending bill on his desk. Reagan's compromise was that he was willing to spend money to get his tax breaks through. Mm-hmm. That's Reagan's great compromise. But the thing is, when you talk about the Liberty Caucus, if you look at this wave of Republicans that have been elected in the last two elections, how many of them have been great moderates? It's that Liberty Caucus. It's the Tea Party. It's the grassroots, the extremely conservative side of the party that is bringing in new members, and also taking over those seats.
They're not great leaders, though. Not
the difference is,
not a single one of them.
From my perspective,
right.
and I'm not a big tent. I am a big tent Republican, but I think we conservatives need to build a tent and let other people get underneath it. I don't think we need to run over to the circus that's become the John Boehner, Mitt Romney show. I think the problem that I see with a guy like Paul Ryan is, what does he actually stand for? He's radical on immigration. You claim that Medicare bill, which I did not read. I can't argue the point with you, is extremely conservative. But what does he stand for? Who's really willing to stand up and follow him? What great conservative principles, beyond not spending too much money, does he stand for? Does he stand for defunding Planned Parenthood? Does he want to stop the killing of babies? Does Paul Ryan stand for anything that's in the right wing or the conservative platform of the Republican Party? I can't name one. But if you go through that Liberty Caucus, if you go through those conservatives that are new to Congress, they do. And they're standing up for it. And guys like me are out here saying, yes, let's fight for a change. Let's not do this surrender thing that we've been doing time and time again in the House of Representatives. Let's put a bill on Obama's desk, make him veto it, and then make him defend his veto. We're not doing that. We're just kind of passive. It's a passive aggressive. There's not an alpha male in the Republican Party that has emerged and stood for anything in a long time.
And Doc, I'm going to have you follow up on that here after the break, because we're come up against it. But please check out our sponsors, everybody. Petrosian Associates, Labinas Law Firm, Halo Capital, Des Moines Anesthesia PC at 515-574-6442. Check them all out. We're at Facebook, Twitter, at docandlefty.com. We will be right back after this. Don't go anywhere. And whoever called in, please call back.